Hello, everybody, and welcome to Frag Fighter Training. My name is Sienna, and I am a conservation technician with the Land Between charity. And today I'm going to be taking you through part 1 of the Frag Fighter Training, Phragmites surveying. Part 2, the actual removal of Phragmites stands, will be available in a separate presentation. Okay, let's get started. So first, just a quick overview of what we're going to cover in this presentation. First, we'll talk about what's involved in Phragmites surveying and how the program is going to work. Then we'll go over what will be included in the FragFighter package that you'll be sent when you register on the Land Between website. Then we'll go over just a bit of general information about invasive Phragmites, so what it is, how to identify it, and some of the impacts it has on the natural environment and human health. Then we'll go into a bit about safety when conducting these surveys. Then we'll go over what you'll need to effectively conduct the surveys. And then we'll go over how to report the Phragmites that you find. So we're going to give you two options to do that, either with the EdMaps Ontario reporting app or through a field reporting sheet, both of which we'll go over. And then finally, we'll go over the actual survey procedure. So, what is involved in Phragmites surveying? Essentially, it involves driving around looking for stands of invasive Phragmites in a defined area based on where you live. So when you register as a frag fighter with the Land Between, which you might or might not have already done, you indicate where you live and how far you're willing to travel to survey for Phragmites. And based on that information, we then assign you a survey area. And we do this just to ensure that as much of the Land Between is surveyed as possible. And then part 2 of the Phragmites surveying procedure is then reporting the stands that you find. And you can either do that again through the EdMaps Ontario app or through a printed form. So when you register as a frag fighter, you will be emailed a package that includes the 5 following things. First, it will include a copy of the invasive Phragmites surveying protocol, which provides a step-by-step guide for surveying for invasive Phragmites, as well as information regarding safety, how to download and use EdMaps Ontario reporting app, and things like that. It's the document that this presentation is based on, so if you have any questions or you'd like a bit more detail about anything I cover in this presentation, that's a good place to look. Your package will also include a copy of the Guide to Identifying Native and Non-Native Phragmites australis. This guide outlines the best ways to distinguish between the native and non-native forms of Phragmites, both of which we have in the Land Between. And it includes clear pictures of each of the distinguishing features, so it's a great tool to help you make a good ID. Your package will also have a map of your assigned survey region so that you know where you need to survey, and also so that you can mark where in your survey area you found invasive stands of Phragmites. You can also use it to plan your daily routes of the areas you're going to survey. The package will also include Phragmites field reporting sheets. So if you are unable or would prefer not to use the EdMaps Ontario app to report the stands that you find, you can use this reporting sheet instead. If you are going to use the sheet method, we ask that you complete one form for every stand that you find, and then scan or email the completed sheets along with the photos that you take of each stand to us at the end of your survey day, and we'll input the data into the app for you. And then lastly, your package will have a percent cover estimation sheet to help you estimate the area occupied by invasive Phragmites, and we'll explain how to use that in a bit more detail later on. So now just a little bit about invasive Phragmites. Invasive Phragmites has been named Canada's worst invasive species by Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada. It's a perennial grass that's found across southern Ontario and the Land Between, and as far north as Sudbury. It's most commonly found growing on beaches or in or near wetlands and roadside ditches. And it tends to invade more disturbed areas like the sides of roads first, and then invade less disturbed areas once it's established itself in a more disturbed area. It grows very aggressively, completely displacing all native plants and the animals that depend on them, and forms dense stands of only Phragmites. It can grow to be up to 5 meters tall, but most of its mass is actually made up of its roots, which are called rhizomes, which account for about 80% of the total mass of the plant. So, as dominating and imposing as it is above ground, most of its mass is actually below the soil. The plant grows throughout the season, but it's most active from about May to August. And the dead standing stalks of the previous year's growth remain standing through the winter and for previous growing seasons, basically until something knocks it over. And then it spreads and invades into new areas, either by rhizome growth into that area, so its roots spread into a new area and it sends up stalks from those roots, or through rhizome fragments, which can spread as a result of damage to the stand and the subsequent improper handling and disposal of the plant material that's generated. Because a new stand of Phragmites can start from a very small rhizome fragment. So now a bit about how to actually identify invasive Phragmites. Generally speaking, it's a large grass species. Again, it can reach up to 5 meters tall, and it grows in dense patches where it's likely the only thing growing there. It has a broad, flat leaf blade that starts about halfway up its stem, and it has a purple or light yellow colored plume or tuft at the end of each stalk. Unfortunately for us, it can very easily be confused with its close relative, which is the native form of Phragmites. We have both native and non-native Phragmites here in Ontario and in the land between. But fortunately, there are a few ways to tell them apart. So I've divided the Phragmites ID section into how to identify it in the winter and early summer versus how to identify it in the summer and fall, because there's different things to look at depending on the time of year. So in the late winter and early summer, you can look at the leaf sheath, which is the bottom part of the leaf that kind of wraps around the stem. You can kind of see it here in this picture. So in native Phragmites, the sheath can either be loosely attached and kind of gap away from the stem, which you can see here, or it can completely fall off when the leaf dies, which results in a bare stem when the leaves die off, so in which case it would look like this. And it's actually more common for the leaf sheath to fall off when the leaf dies and falls off. So that's prompted the creators of this guide to put naked equals native. So if the stem of a stalk from the previous year's growth, so not new growth, is naked, so it has no leaf sheath, or it has a leaf sheath but it's very loosely attached, that's a good indicator that you're looking at native Phragmites. In non-native Phragmites, however, the leaf sheaths tend to be closely attached, which you can see in these pictures here. So this is the stem, this is the sheath, stem sheath, so very closely attached. And they're more likely to remain on the stem after the leaf falls off. So they're less likely to be naked, as is the case with the native Phragmites. In the winter and early summer, you can also look at the inflorescence of the previous year's stems, which is this plume or tuft at the top of each stem. In native Phragmites, the plume tends to be much less full and much less branched, as you can see here on the left, whereas the non-native Phragmites tends to be much more full. So you can use that as an ID feature as well. However, I will say it's always a good idea to look at as many ID features as you can when you're trying to differentiate between non-native and native Phragmites, just to ensure that you're getting the most proper ID possible. So don't rely on just, the relative fullness of a plume. Try to look for both of these features if you can. And these photos here, as well as the photos on the next slide, are taken from the University of Minnesota Guide to Identifying Native and Non-Native Phragmites, which is the guide that is included in your volunteer package. So you'll have this tool at your disposal when you're trying to identify non-native Phragmites. So during the growing season, so that's the summer and fall, you can look at some other things to help you identify non-native Phragmites. Um, one of the things you can look at is the color of the base of the stem. So native Phragmites, the stem tends to be smooth and glossy and kind of a chestnut red color, like you can see here. And that's because the leaf sheath, so again, that part of the leaf that's attached to the stem that kind of wraps around the stem, the leaf sheaths of non-native Phragmites on the lower part of the stem don't consistently overlap each other, so part of the stem is exposed in the gap between the sheaths, and that gap is the part of the stem that turns red. The base of the stem of non-native Phragmites, however, is rough and it's usually green, and this is because the leaf sheaths more consistently overlap each other, so the stems are more consistently green. You can also look at leaf color as a way to differentiate between the two. So native Phragmites leaves tend to be more yellow-green in color, while invasive Phragmites leaves tend to be more blue-green. So you can look at that as well. And stand density can also be used as an indicator, but it's a bit more subjective. So native Phragmites, the stands tend to be less dense, and there'll be more diversity in the stand usually. Whereas in invasive Phragmites, the stands are more dense and tend to be completely dominated by frags, so there won't be any other plants growing near the Phragmites usually. But again, like I said before, it's always a good idea to use as many ID features as you can when you're trying to differentiate between the two. So don't just go off of leaf color or stand density. Try to go for as many as possible. Okay, and for the last section of our Phragmites, invasive Phragmites 101 portion of this presentation, we'll just go over some of the impacts that invasive Phragmites can have on the natural environment, human health, and the economy. First, invasive Phragmites can result in an increased flood risk in some areas. That's because its dense root growth, like we talked about 80% of the plant is underground, is made up by that root mass. That dense root growth can block water channels and slow or divert water runoff, which can result in increased flooding. Invasive Phragmites can also have a devastating impact on the biodiversity of an area, as it completely outcompetes nearly all native vegetation, which in turn makes an area unsuitable habitat for the animals, insects, fish, and other life that relied on that native vegetation base to make that habitat suitable for them. Invasive Phragmites can also have a direct impact on humans. It can grow so densely and tall that it actually completely blocks waterfront access, impeding humans' ability to enjoy their lakefront property or what have you. It can also pose a significant threat to human health as it grows so tall, again, about 5 meters. It can block road visibility, posing some significant dangers there. And there's also a significant cost associated with it. It's been found that nearly $3 million a year is spent by Ontario municipalities on managing invasive Phragmites, so that's removal, education, identification, things like that. An additional $350,000 is spent for management by conservation authorities. So invasive Phragmites has a significant impact on various aspects of life. Okay, so next we'll go into some safety regarding this protocol. First, just some general safety. First off, this protocol can be carried out individually or in small teams, but we do recommend having at least one other person in the car with you. Not only does it make it easier to spot for Phragmites, but it's also just always better to have a safety buddy. Next, we recommend that you wear proper clothing and high visibility clothing when you're out doing your surveys, with proper clothing including closed-toed shoes, gloves, and long pants, and high-vis clothing meaning a high-vis vest, like the one pictured here. We also recommend that you wear weather-appropriate clothing, so if it's cold, hot, rainy, or otherwise, ensure you're dressed for the occasion. We also recommend making a route plan for your day using the map of your survey area that will be provided in your volunteer package, and that you let one other person who's not surveying with you know what your general plan is, so that in the event that something happens or someone needs to get a hold of you, they know where to find you roughly. So someone always knows where you are. And then lastly, pack the essentials. So that's a cell phone, a charger, water, extra snacks, and anything you might need throughout the day so that you're safe and comfortable. Next, some more road-specific safety. So we recommend, of course, that you always follow the rules of the road first and foremost. And then if you see an invasive Phragmites stand, only pull over if and when it is safe to do so. Do not stop in an active lane of traffic. Again, if you see an invasive Phragmites stand, carefully slow down, put your four-ways on, and pull over to the side of the road. Again, only if it's safe to do so. And when you pull over, ensure your car is as far off the road as possible and as is safe to do so. And also, when you are out working on the side of the road or walking on the side of the road, just be vigilant and alert at all times and always be paying attention to oncoming traffic. All right, next we'll go over what you'll need to carry out your surveys. First and foremost, you'll need a survey area map, which again will be included in your volunteer package and will look something like this. So it will outline the area of the land between that you've been assigned to survey, with the barriers of the land between being marked by these yellowy orange colored lines. So the person who was assigned study block G5 would be assigned to survey this area up here. So you have your major roads, your secondary roads, your highways, your major roads, and bodies of water, obviously. You will also need a pencil or pen to fill out your forms and take notes, a camera or a phone with a camera to take photos of the Phragmites stands that you find, a phone with a GPS or a handheld GPS to take coordinates of the stands that you find. You will also need the EdMaps Ontario app downloaded on your phone and ready to use. Again, if you are electing to use the EdMaps app, you'll need this app downloaded and ready to use, but if you're electing to just use the field reporting sheets, that's also fine. And if that's the case, you don't need to have this app downloaded. You will also need a percent cover estimation sheet, which is also included in your volunteer package and will look just like this. This, again, is to help you estimate the percent of a given area that's occupied by invasive Phragmites, just because estimating percent cover can be quite tricky at the best of times. This kind of gives a visual depiction of what, say, 20% cover might look like. It could look something like this, it could look like this, it could look like any of these things. Again, it's just to help you kind of make a well-informed estimation. You will also need a field reporting sheet, which will look exactly like this, and again is also included in your volunteer package. This is to fill out data regarding an invasive Phragmites stand you find if you're not using the app. But it's also a good idea just to have these on hand, even if you are planning on using the app, in the event that something goes wrong. Maybe your phone dies, or the app's not working for whatever reason. It's good to have these as a backup just so you can still take down all the data you need even if the app isn't working. You will also need a guide to identifying native and non-native Phragmites australis, which, as we said, is also included in your guide. In your volunteer package. You will also need a high-vis vest, a car, and a first aid kit. So, like I said, we are encouraging you to use the EdMaps Ontario reporting app to report any invasive Phragmites you come across. It's free to download for iPhones or Androids, and it's very easy to use. And it just makes the job of keeping all of the data in one place and standardized much, much easier. So if you can, we highly encourage you to use this app to do your reporting. So if you are electing to use the EdMaps Ontario app to do your reporting, I'm just going to quickly take you through how to set up an account with the app. If you already have an account set up, that's fantastic. You can just skip through this portion of the webinar. But if you don't, So step one is to download the app from the App Store or the Google Play Store, and then open up the app and click on EdMaps Login, which is circled right there on the left-hand image. You'll then be taken to a screen that looks like this, and you will click on Register with EdMaps, which is circled there. That will then take you to this screen here where you can input your name, your first name and your last name, and your organization. And in the organization field, we're going to ask you to input the letters TLB in all caps. So capital T, capital L, capital B. This way we will be able to find your data easily and be able to sort through all of the data that we get back so that we can then more effectively prioritize which stands we're going to attempt to remove this coming year or in following years. And once you do that, you are all set and ready to use the app. Okay, now I'm going to take you through how to make a report of invasive Phragmites using the EdMaps app. Again, if you would prefer not to use the app and be more comfortable using the hard copy of a field reporting sheet, that's totally fine. But this is for those of you who are going to use the app. So, step one, open the app, make sure that you're all logged in, which we went over how to do in the previous slide. And then you're going to select species categories at the top of the home screen. From there, it will take you to the next panel where you can either select aquatic plants or terrestrial plants. And whether or not you select aquatic plants or terrestrial plants will really just depend on where you're seeing the Phragmites. So if you're seeing the Phragmites in an aquatic environment, like a wetland, you can click on aquatic plants. If you're seeing it in a dry terrestrial environment, like on the side of the road, then you would select terrestrial plants. So Phragmites falls under both of those categories, and it really just depends on where you're seeing it. That will determine which of those you select. Okay, after you select either aquatic or terrestrial plants, you'll be taken to this next screen that looks like this, where you can search for Phragmites by either common name or scientific name. So on the iPhone version at least, the one that you're searching by will be highlighted in blue. And if you want to switch to scientific name, then just click on scientific name. The common name for invasive Phragmites is European common reed. Or if you're searching by scientific name, it's Phragmites australis subspecies australis. Now, earlier in the presentation, we went over how to distinguish between native and non-native Phragmites. But EdMaps Ontario is exclusively for reporting invasive species, so you won't be able to find the native form of Phragmites in this app. I'll also take this time to mention that anything you report in EdMaps Ontario will be verified by an expert before it's published so that everyone using the app can see it. So even if you make a mistake by accident and you accidentally submit native Phragmites into this app instead of the non-native form, or if you mistake it with another plant altogether, that's totally fine, and you won't be contaminating anybody's data or anything like that. All of the observations inputted into this app are verified by experts, so you can make your best guess and people will check your work for you, so no need to worry there. So you have searched for the species name, you found it right there, so it would come up and you can click on this and it will then take you to this next screen here. So it says Phragmites australis subspecies australis, the common name of the species, the date and time that you found it, as well as your location. This date and time and location should be automatically input into the app, but if it's not, you can input that data after the fact. But if it is, then you're ready to move to the next step, which is to take photos. To add photos to the app, you just click on this camera icon here. When taking photos, it's important to take as many photos as possible that can help in the identification of the plant. So that's pictures of the stand as a whole, but also pictures of individual plants, of things like the stem, the leaves, the flowers or the fruits, if there are any, things like that. Anything that can be used to differentiate between species so that the people who are going to confirm your ID can make sure that they're making a proper ID as well. It's also important to try to make sure that the photos that you take are clear, because again, without clear photos, the ID of the plant that you're reporting can't be confirmed by experts that monitor the app later on. So clear photos are important. After you take and upload the photos, you can move on to the observation information section of the report. So when you click on habitat, you will be able to choose from a list of options. They'll give you options like roadside ditch, a field, a meadow, etc. So you can just select the one that most accurately represents where you're seeing this stand. Then you can click on abundance and choose from the options that they provide, which are a single plant, scattered plants, or dense patches. So you can choose one of those three options, again, whichever one best represents um, the, um, the stand. Then you can click on this box here, which has the 3 pound symbols, where you can input an estimate of the area occupied by the invasive Phragmites. You can do that in either hectares or square meters. Just select which one you're using. And then you can click on protocol, where you can just select NA or not applicable, because we're not going to use any of that information for our purposes. And then you can fill out the description section here, where you just select all of the descriptions that apply. So they provide the description of in flower, dead, and so on. It is possible that more than one description could apply to the stand of invasives that you're seeing, so again, just select all that apply. And then lastly, you can fill out the notes section, which you can't see here, but if you were to scroll down on this screen, there would be a small notes section where you can input any additional information regarding the sighting. Helpful information you could include here would be the nearest intersection of roads or other landmarks that could be used to find this stand at a later date. We would also appreciate if you could include in this section an estimate of the percent cover of invasive Phragmites present in the given habitat that you're seeing it in. So this is where that percent cover estimation sheet comes in handy. So for example, say you found a stand of invasive Phragmites that's occupying the entire shoreline around a body of water. We would like to know what percent of that entire lake environment is occupied by Phragmites. So say one of these squares represents the entire lake environment. We would like to know which of these squares best represents the amount of Phragmites in that lake environment. So is it pretty much completely dominated by Phragmites, in which case it's, in the 70, 80, 90% range? Or is it a huge water body and the shoreline environment that's occupied by Phragmites doesn't really take up that much space at all? So it's more in the 10 to 20% range. So again, this is a useful tool when estimating percent cover that you can use. And once you have input all of that information, you are ready to click Save on your report, which is just right here. So when you click Save, your report will automatically be added to your upload queue, which is circled here. And again, this is the main home screen of the app. So you can save all of your reports will be saved in your upload queue until you are in an area where you have Wi-Fi or data and the time to upload your sightings. So to upload a sightings, you go to Upload Queue, circled here, and then it'll take you to this screen where you can select Actions, which will then take you to this next screen where you can select Upload to upload your reports. And you just click, if you have more than one report, let's say you have 5 reports, just make sure all 5 of the circles are selected and you can upload them all at once. From this screen, you can also edit reports just by selecting them. You can also delete reports here if you realize you've made a mistake or you've accidentally duplicated. From this screen, you can also delete any unwanted reports if you've made a mistake or you've accidentally duplicated them or anything like that. Or you can edit reports by clicking on them or selecting all and making whatever edits are necessary before you upload. After you have uploaded your observation reports, you can wait for your sightings to be confirmed by the specialists that monitor the app. This process usually takes about a week, and after your sighting has been confirmed, it will be visible to other users of the app so that individuals or organizations using the app can strategize and prioritize for its removal. Once your sighting has been confirmed, you'll also be able to see it on the app. So that'll be pretty cool as well. So like I said, you don't have to use EdMaps Ontario if you'd prefer not to. You can use this field reporting form instead if that's better or easier for you. It records the exact same information that would be asked for in the app, just on paper form. Also, if you would prefer not to use the app in the field, but you don't mind inputting your data into the app later on, you can use these sheets in the field and record all the data and then just input it all into the app when you're done surveying for the day. If you are electing to use the field reporting form instead of the app, we ask that you fill out one sheet per stand. So we need all of this information for every stand of invasive Phragmites you come across. If you are going to use this field reporting form, we also ask that at the end of each of your survey days, you either scan or take a photo of each of your field reporting forms and email them to us at citizensciencetlb@gmail.com. And then we'll be able to input all of the information that you gathered into the app for you. Also, if you're going to be using this field reporting form exclusively, we ask that you are extra careful to keep track of which photos belong to which stand, and you keep track of which photos belong to each reporting form. That way, when you email us all of your photos and forms at the end of your surveying day, we know which photos belong to which stand, so we can keep it all straight and know which photos to upload with which report. Okay, so we are finally ready to go over the actual survey procedure for surveying for invasive Phragmites. Once you know all of, how to use the app, how to use the reporting form, all of that, the survey procedure is actually quite easy. So it'll only take a couple minutes to go through, but we will do that right now. So step one is to plan a survey route through your assigned area for the day. We ask that you include as much detail in this plan as possible. So that's the approximate times you'll arrive at each location, and so on. And like we talked about in the safety portion of this presentation, we ask that you share this plan with at least one person who will not be participating in the survey. This way someone will know where to look for you if need be. Step two will be to systematically drive through your pre-planned route for the day. We ask that you try to survey as much of your assigned survey area as possible, but certainly don't feel like you need to do it all in one day. You can take the time that you need to survey your area. We would also like to remind you, which hasn't been said yet in this presentation, but it's said several times in the survey guidelines document that is included in your volunteer package, that we are prioritizing smaller stands of invasive Phragmites for removal. And this is because smaller stands actually have the potential to be removed by manual methods, which is the methods we'll be using, whereas larger stands tend to require additional measures for successful removal. So if you find that your assigned survey area has a lot of invasive Phragmites, we ask that you prioritize reporting the smaller stands first. And then if you have extra time, then you can take the time to report the larger stands as well, because the more information, the merrier. But for our purposes, we'd like to know about the small stands first. And for us, we'll be defining a small stand as those that are 4 by 4 meters or 12 by 12 feet or less. So anything that is 4 by 4 meters or smaller, that's what we would like you to prioritize when you're reporting. Okay, so step 3 is when you come across what you believe to be a stand of invasive Phragmites, carefully pull over to the side of the road, if and when it is safe to do so. And then using the Guide to Identifying Native and Non-Native Phragmites Australis, determine if the stand is native or invasive Phragmites. If you determine that you have in fact found a stand of invasive Phragmites, step 4 is to report the stand using either the app or the field reporting form. So just input all of the data that either the app asks for or that is on the data sheet. Step 5 is to then mark the location of the stand on your survey map. So you can either draw a little star on your map or put a sticker, whatever works best for you. Step 6 is to ensure that you have recorded all of the relevant information that the app or the form asks for before you leave the site, because you don't want to have to come back, of course. And then step 7 is to carefully return to your vehicle, signal appropriately, and continue on your survey. And you just repeat the steps when you come across another stand. And then the final step, when you have data or Wi-Fi or the time, is to save and upload all of your data onto EdMaps. So again, make sure that you upload those reports, not just saving them to your upload queue. If you're using the app, or if you're using the reporting sheets, to email all of your data sheets and the corresponding photos to citizensciencetlb@gmail.com, and we will input that data for you. So again, step 8 happens at the end of each survey day. The final step, when you've completed your surveys for the season, so this is when you're done, you're done surveying for Phragmites for the year, we ask that you please scan or photograph your survey area map with the approximate locations of each of the stands marked on them. Scan or photograph them and send them to citizensciencetlb@gmail.com. And that brings us to the end of this frag fighter training presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to work through this presentation. If you have any questions about what we discussed in this webinar or the Frag Fighters program in general, please don't hesitate to contact us. We can be reached by email at citizensciencetlb@gmail.com or in the office by phone at 705-457-1222.